Hello, you're welcome to yet another tutorial. My name is Eva, and in today's tutorial we'll be learning how to draft a Victorian corset. The measurements needed for this pattern will be on the screen, and this video will be divided into two. The first will be the pattern drafting and the second the actual sewing of the corset. Make sure to watch both videos to the end, and please don't forget to subscribe, like and share. So to start off this pattern, we have gone ahead to draw out our horizontal lines. It's very important to know how to draft a basic bodice pattern so you can duly follow up on these lines. I have a video of how to draft a basic bodice block. I will leave the link in my description box. Please make sure to watch. So this is me labeling our lines. That's our shoulder line, our bust line, our under bust line, our waistline, and then our hip line. So the next thing to do now is to get our neckline. I went in by 3 inches and 3 inches depth. The next thing is to get our shoulder measurement divided by 2. The shoulder measurement we are working with is 15. Divided by 2 we have 7.5. So I took 7.5 and came down by 1 inch just to get our shoulder slope. So we are just trying to create a basic bodice block. The next thing to do now is to get our armhole length. Your armhole length is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. So I'll go ahead to extend that line, and that will serve as our chest line. So the next thing is to get our dart lines, which we can get by dividing our bust span by 2. And our bust span for this tutorial is 8. Divided by 2 we have 4. So we take 4 from our bust line down to our hip line, and we connect the lines. This is me connecting the lines from the bust line to the hip line. Next we come to our shoulder, and we get the midpoint of our shoulder slope. So from that shoulder slope, we'll connect the line from that midpoint to our bust line. After that, it's time to take our darts. So from the waistline, I took 0.7 on both sides. If the person is busty, you can take up to 1 inch on both sides or 1.5 from both sides. So from there, I came down from the bust line. I came down by 1 inch and connect my darts. This is to leave enough room for our bust to sit in. And from the hip line, I came up by 1 inch and connected our darts. So the next thing is to come up by 2 inches from our chest line. You can go lower or higher depending on how curved or how deep you want your sweetheart neckline. So from that 2 inches, we'll do our bust tightening. And by doing that, we'll take half an inch on both sides from that line and connect our darts to our bust line. Next thing is to get our sweetheart neckline. Remember, this is not compulsory. You can decide to get any design you want for your neckline. But for me, I'm just coming from the 2 inches I went up to down to my chest line. So after we are done with that, we get our body circumference, our body measurements. And the bust we're working with is 36 divided by 4, we have 9. So we measure the darts we have there so that we don't have any shortage. We replace it back. We'll do the same for the bust line. And then on the waistline, the waist we are working with is 29. Divided by 4, we have 7.5. We are going to replace the dart we have there, which is about 1.5. We'll replace it. And then on the hip line, we are working with 39 divided by 4, we have 9.7. And then we connect the lines. The next thing to do is to get our armhole curve. So measure the length of your arm length, the midpoint, and from there you come in by half an inch and connect your armhole. So from that, our arm length line will come down by half an inch. This is to prevent your corset sitting right under your armhole after sewing. So from that point, we'll connect it to the ½ inch we came down from. The next thing to do is to do our underbust tightening. Our underbust circumference is 30. We took it out and then we replace the ½ inch there. So after doing that, whatever is remaining, we'll measure it out and share it on both sides, starting from the dart lines that we took, from the dart lines, not the middle original dart line, from the already dart line that we took. We'll give the bigger part to the one coming to the side and the smaller side to the one coming to the front. For instance, if you got 1 inch from the remaining, make sure to give like 0.7 to the one coming to the side and 0.2 to the one coming to the front. And then we'll connect the darts from there to the waistline, from the waistline to the bust line, to the 1 inch we came down from the bust line. I'm just going to finish this off with a curve. This is to avoid any sharp edges. So the next thing to do is to cinch our waist. Our original waist circumference is 29, but we'll be reducing it by 1 inch, making it 28. So from the waistline, I'm going to divide the front pattern into two. Remember, our bust span is 4. I'm dividing it into 2, which is 2. So I'm going to draw a straight line. And from the waistline, I'm going to come in by 0.2 on both sides from the line that I drew. Then I'll connect it to the bust line and then come up by 1 inch from the hip line and connect it. Please just watch what I'm doing carefully. From there, I'll connect it to the bust line. And from there, I'll connect it to the 1 inch I came up from the hip line. So now our waist is 28 instead of 29. You can go ahead and cut more pieces if you so desire. You just start from the dart line and divide the side into 2 and get more pieces. But for me, this is it. So the next thing to do is to shape my top. So from the side, I came up by 1.5 and then I'm going to just make a curve from there to the front of my top of my pattern. So this is basically it for our front pattern, but before you cut out, please make sure to label your pattern, as this can be very confusing. So I labeled the center front and center front too, and then the side front before I cut out. So these are all our pattern for the front. As you can see, I've gone ahead to label them because it can be really confusing. So now let's draft out our back pattern. So for our back pattern, we have gotten our horizontal lines, which is the shoulder line. From the shoulder line down to 10 inches our bust line, 16 inches our waistline, and then our hip line, which automatically serves as the length of our top. So I'm just trying to get my neckline. We don't really have use for this, but we are using it as a guide. But if you want your corset to have a yoke, this is very important. So we measured out our shoulder line, which is 7.5, and then we came down by 1 inch and we connected our shoulder slope. And from then I got my armhole length. This is basically what we did for the front. So that will serve as the chest line. So the next thing to do now is to label our lines. So after doing that, the next thing we are going to do is to get our bust span measurement, which is 4. And we are going to connect the lines. And just like we did for the front, from the dart line, we are taking 0.7 on both lines from the waistline. And then from the chest line, we are coming down by 1 inch and connecting our darts. And then from the hip line, we are coming up by 1 inch and connecting our darts. So we are taking our body measurements. From the chest line and the bust line, we are taking our bust circumference divided by 4. And on the waistline, we are taking our waist line divided by 4, and we replace the 1.5 inch we took for that, and on the hip line we are taking our hip measurements. Then we connect the line. Then from that arm length we come down from, we are going to come down by half an inch like we did for the front, and connect the curve from there to our bust line. You can decide to leave your back straight, but it sits better this way. So from the bust line we are going to tighten our back neckline, and on both sides we are taking 0.2 from both sides. This will enable us tighten our back line, and then we are connecting the darts to the waist. So from the side we are just replacing the dart we just took away from the back neckline so that we don't have any shortages, and we are connecting it from there to the waistline. So the next thing we are going to do now is to cinch our waist again by 1 inch, just like we did for the front. Remember, in the front we did it for the center part, but for this back we are doing it for the side part. So here I'm trying to get the middle of our side part, starting from our dart line. As you can see, I'm just extending the lines. So after getting our lines, the next thing to do, just like we did for the front, is to cinch our waist. From the waistline I took 0.2 on both sides, and I'm connecting it to our chest line. From the hip I came up by 1 inch and connected our darts. I'm just marking out the places I don't need. So next is to shape our pattern. So from the hip line I came up by 1.5 and shaped our pattern. Next thing is to cut out the center back, because we don't need zip for this pattern. We are going to use loops or eyelets. So from the center back I came in by 1.5, and I'm going to cut that out, so we don't need it again. So this is the back pattern. Before we cut it out, we'll go ahead to label it. This is our center back 2, and our side back. So we'll now go ahead to cut out this pattern. That is basically all for this back pattern. Don't forget to label, as it can be very confusing. So these are all the pieces for this pattern. As you can see, I did not put any sewing allowance on this pattern. I'll do that when I'm cutting on the fabric. So my next video will be on how to sew this beautiful corset top. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be notified when I post the video. I hope you understand and enjoyed this tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in my next video.